Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is that drawing with basic primitive shapes and forms is always a good exercise, and this is referred to as stereometric drawing, and this will help you with things like proportions, alignment, perspective. It's a lot easier to figure out the angle and orientation of a torso by drawing shapes like these, and even a pelvis. So if you were to bring this up and say, okay, well, this is our torso. What if our pelvis was down here? You're able to kind of figure this out with a little bit of perspective without drawing in, vanishing points and perspective lines. And it just takes a little bit of practice. So at first you might practice just drawing, a square like this, get good at drawing, a square, circle, and an oval. And then from there you might take it further and say, okay, what if I convert that square to, prism or cube-like shape like this? What if I take this oval and I put another oval over here? And then what if I take this, this circle here, put a really small circle back there, and I connect them. So by doing that, you're basically establishing perspective, and really it doesn't have to be perspective because you could have a form to one of your characters, right? And the character's form is going to taper down. So that's not necessarily perspective, but it could be. You could do the same thing like this, and if it gets really small, then it could resemble the form of a form receding into space. But the main thing is that you practice these shapes over and over again to where they become second nature. So it becomes easier for you to say, okay, well, I'm going to have a head in perspective, and I want it looking up. So I'm going to see the bottom of the, bottom of the head, the chin, under the jaw, even though you would have to obviously draw this through a couple different ways to really pinpoint that. But it gives you that starting point of perspective, and you say, okay, well, if that's where the head is, then maybe the torso is, about here somewhere. And I probably need to be a little bit further up, closer to the head. That'd be pretty long neck there. So let's fix that real quick. Really, the head was too big for the proportions anyways. So we're looking up. You know what, let's bring that back. Let's have them looking up further. We're looking up at the character, so we need to see the bottom of that. It needs to get hidden by that other shape, that other form. So let's do that. And then for the pelvis, we want there to be a different orientation. So let's bring that back this way. Something like that. There's any number of ways that we could align these and arrange these. And plus, I want you to think too that you don't have to make these all clean and nice. Like, I'm sure some of you are looking at this and saying, wow, some of these lines are really nice and clean, and others might be thinking, wow, he's a bit messy. Neither is right or wrong. It's not the point. This is exploratory. This is design related. And design means, I want you to think about something. So for instance, when you go to draw something, right? If you're like this, you're committing to an idea. Those are all committed lines. This is searching lines, okay? And the reason why I'm saying that early on in this course is because for a while, we want to do some searching, we want to do some designing. And because of that, we're going to do a lot more of this. And letting some of those lines sit where they, fall where they may, is part of the process. Okay, that's part of that sketching and designing and exploration of the forms and even the line energy. So just think about that, because there's a very different way that you draw once you've got enough of this in place, and then you go in there to refine it. Then you're a lot more committed to your line making. So what I want you to do is practice drawing these in all sorts of ways. Don't be too critical on yourself. let your hand just kind of glide across the page or digital surface, whatever you're using, and just have fun with it. But draw a lot of these. Lots of cylinders, lots of prism-like shapes, and then also practice even drawing behind some of the others. And I see that naturally occurs as I run out of space here. But that's important. Like, you want this sense of depth, and you get that by overlapping these shapes and these forms. So you're kind of mimicking perspective. You're trying to create depth on an otherwise flat surface, a 2D image, and you're just trying to do things like, you know, pinpoint maybe center to these cylinders. You can crisscross the corners in a cube-like prism or a rectangular prism, and you can find center. You know, all those things are advantageous to do when you start to create characters, because once you do this and you go to overlay anatomy and different things through it, I'm going to show you how we combine this with gesture drawing and anatomy. But it becomes a lot easier to align the pectoral muscles when you have all these guides in place, instead of just jumping in there and drawing them and, you know, letting the chips fall where they may. So again, practice this quite a bit. Overlapping shapes, lots of cubes, lots of cylinders. Even practice just simple ovals and spheres. So for instance, you might, you know, if you draw like a sphere here and you practice you know, drawing an axis or something like that through it. So you can do stuff like that. All of this is good food for thought for what we'll be doing later. That's actually a bit much. There's a really, I'd probably say just the one like that, because circles are circles. You're going to use spheres and ovals, but yeah, a circle and a sphere, it's pretty hard to tell unless you do something, you know, something like this at least. So yeah, try this out. Fill up the page, have fun with it, relax, don't be critical. It's not like I'm obviously trying to put any of these in a specific spot. I'm just trying to practice the shapes themselves. Whatever comes to mind is fine. And then just yeah, explore some ideas with this. And if nothing else, you'll warm up your hand and your eye coordination for the next step. So with that, let's move on to our next lesson.